Hi, I'm MJ from Lioness Publications, and good afternoon. And we're going to be looking at Greenland and specifically Denmark, because Greenland is under Denmark's possession. I've wanted to do Denmark for a while since Trump has been bringing up his statements about Greenland, but everything else has sort of been coming through with the summit of some Asian countries, and then with Charlie Kirk and a few other things in the mix. So I think it's a good time to sort of come back and take a look at Greenland and see where they are heading. So again, Trump has been doing some saber rattling about how he thinks Greenland should come under the jurisdiction of the United States. And it was frankly quite worrying to a lot of people. And especially when they found that there were some people that were obviously sent there to start talking to the citizenry to try to influence them. So it's been a little bit of a wild ride, but it seems like it's settled down. So let's start taking a look at some of the angles they've had. And we're going to start off with a progression angle that happened around 8/8 of this year. And this was Sun trine Saturn. And I'm going to try in this thing to explain this using analogies and see if people understand it a little bit better. When you have Sun trine Saturn, it's like you're moving, the sun is making an angle as sort of move forward in its identity. And in this case, it's making an angle to Saturn. So as an analogy, I would say there's a person that goes out and decides to create a garden. Okay. And they're tending to their plants and they're watering them and they're doing everything right. And that would be, in effect, the sun. But now, how does Saturn come into that? Well, when they created the garden, they didn't realize it, but they were creating it sort of where there were two walls intersecting. So in effect, the walls are providing some structure to the garden, some boundaries, some borders. It's protecting it. That's an analogy of Sun trining Saturn, where the two are working seamlessly together. You don't even see it. So sometimes you don't even realize that it's working because both of these came together. So how does this relate to Denmark? Well, Denmark is now trying to look at other solutions. And who does it have as its back, as its border, as its protector? It has the rest of EU. So this is a step forward that Denmark is making. It's a positive step forward. Now, the next thing we have is and that was part of the progression. On 8/10, we have Jupiter squaring Mars. So this is like too much that you can't get what you need accomplished. What's an analogy here? Let's say you create a rocket ship. You have it on the launch pad. It's all ready to go. It's all fueled up, all ambition, all hot and ready. And then you decide to start changing things. You change the wings on the rocket. You change the propulsion system. Is it even going to work anymore? Maybe not. All that changing is because of Jupiter. So in this case, what are you doing? Jupiter squaring Mars. You have something that can work, but now you're doing what? Putting too much into it. Overbuilding it. So it may no longer work. What does this mean with Denmark? It could be they're planning too much. Okay. They may be too optimistic. They need to tap it back. They need to keep it plain and simple. They need to make sure it can work. So that's the message there. Now, when we move on 8/21, we have Mercury in conjunct Uranus. So this means that plans are unexpectedly changed, and they're changed such you can't get back there. So you have to improvise. So let's take a look at an analogy here. we have a screenwriter that puts together a whole series of scripts for a series of shows. Puts in all the dialogue, and it's all planned, and it's all sort of, blocked together, all these pieces. So in effect, the stories are meant to go from one story to another story to another story. And yet, in the first scene, in the first story, one of the actors ad-libs, and it changes the whole storyline. So you can no longer get to the end point you were planning. It's changed. So what does this mean for Denmark? It means that they're going to have changes in their plans. They're going to find that they can't get to the end point. And this is typically around 821. So this already happened. They probably found that things that they're planning, they can't get to there. They have to change. Okay. So in effect, Mercury and Uranus are no longer aligned here. They're disjointed. Next one we have here is Mercury conjuncting, or actually moving into Capricorn. And we don't spend too much time on this, but as you have solar arcs and as you have progressions, your planets move into different signs. So it changes you. So you go from one type of sign and implementation to another. So in this case, with Denmark, Mercury is moving into the sign of Capricorn. So let's take the analogy of a traveler sort of moving around aimlessly and getting people's stories and finding things that are curious to him and investigating. And then he finally gets to the bottom of a mountain and someone hands him a detailed map. And he sort of looks at it and it's all detailed. It's all goal-based. Tells him the steps he has to take and where he's going to end up. So the traveler stops not to stop his journey, but to analyze the plan and say, okay, that's what's happening to Denmark. They're no longer so aimless in their thinking. What they're doing is now being more pragmatic. Where do they want to get to and how do they get there? Mercury and Capricorn. Very pragmatic, very goal-oriented. Okay? Now, the next one we have is Jupiter square Uranus. This case, we have all that optimism, in effect, being sort of torn apart by the changes that Uranus brings in. Let's use this analogy for Jupiter, which is a perfect one. One of those big balloons, the balloons you fly in? Okay, so it's soaring up high and high. And, filled with air, filled with gas. And all of a sudden you have a summer storm. Thunder, lightning. The balloon starts getting whipped around. Could it get damaged? Could it go down? Yes. But what it means is, in Denmark's case, they can't be too optimistic. They can't make these things so gaseous. They have to take into account the things that could tip them up. It's hard because they're unexpected. But maybe make the plans a little less optimistic. So in effect, you're not flying so high when you get taken out. Okay? Now, this next one we have, and actually this comes back on 1120. So that was on 11.2, comes back 11.20. What's the message here? Something's going to be taken out if they're not careful. Meaning that they were too optimistic, and in effect, something unexpected is going to happen. And they need to probably plan that anything around that time, and this is in the transit, could maybe not work. Next one we have is Saturn in conjunct Pluto. In this case, we have structure not being able to be utilized because of Pluto, which is control, manipulation. So let's think of this analogy. We have an architect that designs this big, beautiful fortress that's designed to be there for centuries. But it was designed on top of an old, ancient, simmering volcano. So will this work long term? No. But in effect says you can't get there from here. So you can't get to the control you want, the long lasting between where you are. The fortress will not last. Okay. Eventually, Pluto as a volcano will come up, or maybe not, but you're always going to be worrying about it. So that in conjunct. Okay. Next one we have is, and that's on 11/22. So right around Thanksgiving time that we're going to have that Saturn in conjunct Pluto. Next one we have is on 4/9. I went a little bit into next year, and this is a progression. Oh, and by the way, that 11/22 for the Pluto was a solar arc angle. Progression, we've got Venus ink Sun on 4/9 of 26. So Venus, we've got the supportive people, we've got the social structure, the peers, and in this case, in conjunct Sun is the identity. So in this case, sometimes our facade no longer fits who we are. And the best way to sort of explain that as an analogy is you're an actor and you're always on a stage and you have all these wonderful costumes and the costumes fit perfectly. They're comfortable. You can do anything in them. But then all of a sudden the costumes don't fit. Okay? That's the Venus in conjunct. They don't fit. They're too tight. They don't feel right. They're itchy. They're scratchy. Venus in conjunct Sun. It doesn't work anymore. Now, if you're a politician, this could be something where your people, your voters don't like you anymore. So there's something here that's not sitting well. Okay, sitting well. You're itchy, you're scratchy to them. Okay. Now, lastly, we have Mars opposing Saturn. And this is next year around 7/15. I went into this one because this could be sort of some type of issue or event that comes up next year. And Mars is all that energy, and Saturn is what? Restriction. What's the best way to describe this? Think of a runner running down a track, all fueled up, a lot of ambition, gung ho, and they run right into a block wall. That brick wall is there. They keep on pushing against the brick wall. It's not moving. That is Mars opposing Saturn. So in this case, the energy, the aggression, the drive is against what? A brick wall. So we have two opposing pieces here. It doesn't work the way it is. There has to be some type of compromise or some type of way to work around it. So this is what will be hitting Denmark probably next year. And again, if this is, if the dates are right, so probably some type of maybe settlement, some type of additional work being done. But I assume it may be discussions that lead to nowhere. So that could be it. I hope you enjoyed this. And again, I'm trying to do this with analogies and maybe it'll make more sense to people. Maybe they can get a visual picture of this and understand how these angles tell you ahead of time what you're going to be facing. And that's the whole intent of astrology. Have a good evening. Bye now.